This is Chris Kell with the third presentation in our group training series, Anatomy of a Group Training Session. All right, and this program is all about reading our group template. We've talked a bit about coaching exercises and how we go through things, what we teach our clients, and our warm-up and mobility routines. Now we want to talk just about how we put these together in a system. All right, and while the program template changes on a monthly basis by filling in different exercises and different different conditioning drills and that sort of thing, the structure is the key thing. The structure rules the world and rules everything else. And as long as you can read the template, you're going to be successful. So expanding upon this idea of fitting things into a system, these are the elements of our boot camp session. Number one, we have core training, which is around 5 to 10 minutes. Number two, we have circuit training, which is going to consist generally of 2 circuits, which is going to be anywhere from 12 to 15 minutes for each circuit. And then we're going to finish the workout off with some sort of a high-intensity conditioning interval. And while this program has been designed to be maximally efficient in terms of exercise, what I also want to emphasize is that we are training perception here. All right, and that really is the main reason why we are starting with an ab circuit. While we want to strengthen the person's abs and really focus on getting them structurally sound, the reality is that by focusing on this area first, it immediately creates the perception that we're focusing on the areas of their body that they want to target. And that is true. And we'll go through our core training session, but generally this is going to come down to an ab circuit, and this is something that we use to brand our program. I feel like our ab circuits are probably the best known to man, and being that I created them, I would agree with myself. But the point is that we're always going to start with that because that is our signature. From there, we go into the traditional circuit training that you might expect from a boot camp, high-intensity interval training, body weight exercises, whatever it may be, for the majority of the session. All right, this is the meat of the session, and this is what will take longest. And then we're going to always finish off with what we call a conditioning finisher. And the finisher just comes down to a high-intensity a high-intensity circuit, be it high-intensity interval training or some sort of a teamwork thing where we do something like a tug of war where people are working together to achieve a shared goal. Both of those things have value, and they leave the person with the perception that, man, what just happened? I just worked harder than I ever thought I could. Okay, so by kind of putting the ab circuit first and the finisher last, we train perception around the sort of the necessary meats of the session in the middle. So it's sort of like a conditioning sandwich almost. So now when we look at our weekly program structure, generally we work on a 3-day boot camp model. All right, we have day 1, day 2, and day 3. And the way we set things up is that day 1 is always going to be hardest, whereas day 3 is always going to be easiest. Just based upon fatigue throughout the week, we find that we can go hardest on day 1. Exercises are going to be the most explosive. We're going to throw the hardest, most power-oriented intervals that we can at our clients on this day. And generally that's going to be short duration, very anaerobic intervals, 20 to 30 seconds, plyometric, throws, jumps, whatever it may be. And then as we progress throughout the week, things become a little bit easier. On Wednesday, we take a more endurance focus where, again, we're still working on intervals on this day, but the intensity is a little bit more moderate. The intervals are a little bit longer to accommodate a more aerobic pace. And again, things just start to slow down just a little bit. On Friday, we do what is called our Friday throwdown, okay, and we perform a circuit. Okay, in circuit training, rather than saying, I want you to do an interval for 30 seconds, we give them maybe 3 exercises, and we say, okay, I want you to perform these things back to back for 8 reps, and repeat the circuit as many times as possible in 8 minutes. What I like about this is it's self-selected. The person could go as hard or as easy as they want, but it's based upon their level of fatigue and their perception of how they feel that day. Okay, so that is something that kind of accommodates how the person is doing on that particular day, and it allows us to kind of self-select. The people that are not feeling good, that are really tired and beat up, we can substitute mobility drills, for example, for strength training exercises on that day. For the people that are more experienced and that are good to go, we can hit them as hard as we need to. But by scaling it that way, it's self-selecting. We generally do not do a finisher on that day just because the person is tired, and if they're going to work really hard, the circuit will do it to them. We'll do our job for us. So don't necessarily need to do that. But on day 3, we call this the Friday Throwdown because, again, this is going to be a circuit that the person can score. Okay, so again, if we say we get 3 rounds of a circuit that we perform for 10 minutes in week 1, that's our baseline. But if we get 6 rounds in week 3, when we repeat the workout, you're in better shape because you get more work in the same amount of time. So that allows the person to compare their results, and it also allows us to compare person to person. So this creates a little bit of teamwork. It creates a little bit of a challenge for them, and it's something where, again, we invite people to invite their friends on this day, to bring anybody that's potentially interested, to really get the idea of working hard and working together as a team. We also are going to scale our workouts based upon the individual. All right. In our template, as you'll see, we have a beginner, an intermediate, and a hard option, or beginner, medium, hard. Our hard options are going to be things that are going to be holding weight, jumps, that sort of thing. But we want to scale that down based upon the person. And generally, it's just going to be variations of the same exercise. So if we look at an example here of a hard option for the circuit, we might have a push-up on the floor. The easy option might be a push-up inclined up on a bench or even a wall. Okay, for a finisher, we might have somebody doing burpees for the hard option, which involves a lot of jumping and that sort of thing. And we might have them doing just a slow sprawl where they come into a push-up position and simply stand up at a slower pace for the easier option. So again, we just make the exercises harder or easier, and we fill that in the template. Now, kind of some ways that you could do that as well, because again, you'll find that people will come in with injuries. There'll be certain issues that we can't really plan for. Some ways that we can scale. All right, if you have jumping exercises or things that move at a fast pace, one way that we can scale is to move at a slower speed. What we could also do is reduce range of motion. For example, if somebody's doing a full range push-up and their shoulder hurts when they get to a certain level, that probably means that they've kind of maxed out their range of motion. So we would restrict their range of motion to say halfway, okay, by just maybe putting carpet squares up, or just say go down to this point only. What we could also do is we could substitute a lighter implement, such as a stability ball or a foam roller. So say the person is doing push presses with a barbell. Okay, for our beginner client, that would cripple them. So instead, we give them a foam roller. To me, that looks a lot like a barbell, and it's going to accomplish the same purpose in terms of getting their heart rate up without hurting them, and that's going to be the main thing. What we can also do is substitute isometrics, meaning rather than doing a push-up, we simply have the person hold in a push-up position. So there's a lot of value to that, and that's definitely something that you can do for most exercises, be it a squat or a split squat or what have you. Simply have the person, when we're working on strength, that is, simply have the person hold in that position, and they will still, get some training effect, get very tired, and at the same time, you're not going to hurt them. Now, what we also do is generally for people with upper extremity problems, such as shoulder problems, we'll sub pulling exercises for pushing exercises. So anytime somebody has a shoulder problem and they're doing a push-up, simply sub that for a band row or some sort of a row of some kind. And generally that is a little bit more shoulder friendly. For somebody that has knee problems, we're going to sub hip dominant exercises. So for example, if somebody's knees are hurting when they're doing a squat, have them do some sort of a kettlebell swing or a deadlift variation where they're using their hips versus their knees, and that'll take pressure off of that area. So there's always ways to go, and this is definitely something that we'll continue to workshop as our program. So let's talk about core first, our first section. It's always going to be performed before the circuit, and the idea is to focus on the abs and glute activation before we get going. There's not much to this other than to say that generally for us, we're going to go core, 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 hip. Meaning if we have 4 exercises in this circuit, we're going to be performing each exercise from anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds each. We would choose 3 core exercises and 1 hip exercise for that particular. So if we look at an example, on day 1 for our hard circuit, we might focus on core strength, where we're trying to make exercises harder and use progressive resistance. And for me, core strength exercises are going to be things like a straight leg sit-up, reverse crunches, and things that involve movement of the torso, okay, because that is working on the strength function of the abs. Day 2 is going to be based upon a little bit more endurance. Okay, so rather than saying, let's do a sit-up where I'm moving the torso, I'm working more on something like a dead bug exercise or a plank, where again I'm holding in that position while moving my extremities. Okay, so day 2 is based a lot more upon that. Day 3 is going to be mixed, meaning we might combine the two. We might have a sit-up followed by a plank. But the point being is that there's going to be an easy exercise and a hard exercise for each of these as an option for the clients. So moving on to our second section, we have circuit training. Circuit training is going to be an interval training or a circuit geared to develop either strength and endurance based upon the day. We're going to write these things on the whiteboard, and we challenge the client to count the number of reps that they perform. Now, if the client is able to do the circuit or the exercise presented, maybe at the medium option with good form for the prescribed time, then we tell them to move to the harder option. Or if they are at the hard option, we find some way to make it more difficult. So again, generally we're going to have 3 levels: beginner, medium. So once again, based upon the weekly split, day 1 we have power. We're going to be using heavier exercises. We might incorporate some weight training on this day along with more explosive based exercises. Day 2 is going to be based upon more endurance-based exercises. The intervals are going to be longer. As you can see, we're going anywhere from 40 to 90 seconds, and we're focusing a little bit more on body weight exercises and band type exercises. So, rather than saying a weighted push-up, we have something like a band press. We're still working the same muscles, but we're doing it in a different way, in a little less intense way, based in kind of incorporating more volume into that. For our Friday throwdown, all bets are off. Based upon the person, we're going to plug in the exercises based upon how they are feeling on that particular day. We'll use a variety of different formats, such as 10 to 1s, 20 to 2s, and 50, 40, 30, 20, 10s, and we'll demonstrate those for you. The point is that we plug in just 3 to 5 exercises and utilize those formats. That's a pretty simple workout and definitely something that can be improvised based upon the particular. For the last portion of our session, we focus on conditioning. Right? We always perform this last to what we call finish off our clients and to finish the session on a high note. And this could be anything from really high intensity interval training to team activities that involve working together to maybe carry objects or to count down from a certain exercise or what have you. Now, what we do on that day is definitely going to be based upon the person, because we're going to give you hard to easy options, kind of based upon how the person is feeling and what they can do that day. All right, I can't emphasize this enough. If the person looks worked over, they're covered in sweat, and they're tired, the question is, how hard do we have to hit this person? What I would do in that scenario is either have them skip the conditioning altogether and just stretch, or perform the easier option. Now, by contrast, if the person is more experienced, they've been in the boot camp for a while, they understand what's going on, and they look as if they really haven't worked that hard, then hit them as hard as you can. And for me, we break this down into 3 categories. Hard is going to be like 8 to 9 out of 10, okay, which is they're going to their max heart rate. Moderate is going to be 6 to 8 out of 10, and they're going to about maybe 90% of their heart rate. So again, that's going to be variable, but it's moderately difficult. Easy is like a 1 to a 5. All right, that's just the person is already tired. We really don't need to do that much at that point to get their heart rate up. It's just almost a cool down. So either way, just look at your person and figure out who they are, what they're dealing with at that time, and what their particular need is. Always err on the side of caution and just figure out what they need versus what they say they need. So when we're looking at finisher formats, generally these are going to be 5 that we use a lot. Intermittent intervals are going to be 2 exercises performed back to back for a certain amount of time. So what we would say is, okay, I want you to perform 30 seconds of burpees followed by 30 seconds of wall slides. We have a very hard exercise, which is a burpee, and then we have a recovery exercise that we use to let the person's heart rate come down. We simply repeat that for 6 to 10 minutes. Okay, and we can change those intervals, based upon the day and the person. So we could go 30 seconds of work followed by 30 seconds of rest. If the person is a little bit less experienced, we could even go maybe 20 seconds of work followed by 40 seconds of rest. Based upon who that person is, we can change that interval. So that is definitely one option. We also have Tabatas, okay, which are very high intensity exercises, and something that we count with Tabatas and with intermittent intervals. What we're going to ask the client to do, what we measure is we say, okay, I want you to count the number of reps that you get per interval and try to maintain or beat that number per round. So, for example, in Tabatas, I would do something like 20 seconds of work followed by 10 seconds of rest, and repeat that for up to 4 minutes. Now, I could say for 20 seconds, I want you to do push-ups. Go as hard as you can, and I want you to count that number. Keep that number in your head and attempt to either maintain or beat that number. All right, and after the workout is over, I could have them write their best score on a whiteboard. So that's kind of how we score that. We could also do the same thing with the intermittent intervals. And that you can make that optional. That's not something people have to do. I find that when we try to box people in, that's when we start to get in trouble. But again, that's a way to kind of keep people motivated and to give people a way to measure their results. We also have what are called countdowns, where we might say, okay, I want you to perform 10 reps of each exercise back to back. Okay, so we have a push-up and a squat. You're going to go 10 push-ups and 10 squats. All right, then you're going to start over and do 9 push-ups and 9 squats. And what we're going to do is set the clock for 5 minutes. I want you to try to get from 10 to 1, counting down in this manner, or as close as you can in this 5-minute period. All right, and again, you give them a challenge. Some people might get down to 3. Some people might get down to 1 and start going back up the ladder. The point is that, again, they can write those things down. So we measure either how far they get in that 5-minute period, or how long it takes them to get from 10 to 1, or whatever we might derive. We also have a finisher challenge, where we can say, okay, for today's finisher challenge, I want you to do 100 burpees and 100 squats in 5 minutes. Make it happen. And we either record how long it takes them to get done with those 2 tasks, or how far they could get in that 5-minute period. So looking at our workout template, we have core training, circuit 1, circuit 2, and our finisher. Regardless of whether we're working with a small group training program or with boot camp, this is the general format that our template will take. We might fill in different exercises in different ways, but this is the way it's going to look. All right, so we can see that we have 3 cores and a hip for core. For circuit 1 and circuit 2, we're working on strength and interval type exercises. And then for our finisher, we have a hard, a medium, and an easy option. If the client is having problems with those, or the client is, feel free to sub in exercises in that same category. For example, if a client has a shoulder problem and they can't do a push-up, there's no problem with putting a band row in there. What I don't want you to do, unless you're subbing maybe a pull for a push, is to give them a leg exercise when we're asking them to do an upper body push. So as long as you can plug exercises into those same categories, the workout will run smoothly. And that's really the crux of how we do these things. The exercises will change every month, but all we do is we do our core circuit for however many reps and sets we set up. We might say 3 sets of 30 seconds for core, do those things back to back, then move on to circuit 1, sets of 30 seconds for each exercise, stop, move on to circuit 2, and then finish with whatever finisher format that we set down. So finally, in terms of session logistics, the main thing is that you're showing up early to make sure you're the first person there. Okay, you're showing up early to set up, but you're also teaching your clients their foam rolling and their warm-up routine. We want our clients to be like well-drilled soldiers. Everybody should know the deal. They should know what's going on, and really that's going to be based upon you either during their initial orientation or during the first couple sessions, just reinforcing our client policies. Get there early, foam roll and stretch. Warm-ups begin promptly at the set time, and clean up as we're done, and just all of those things. All right. What we also want to do is write down clearly our workouts on our whiteboard. Make sure that those things are clearly documented. People know what they're doing, and you can refer to them as you're going along. What I'm also going to do is create a warm-up board. Generally, for most of our, whether we're working in a private gym or we're in a commercial gym, we just put up a small bulletin board with the warm-ups, or we could even pass them out on day one to show them exactly what we want them to do. If they're late, this is what you do. This is what you perform. So as long as we have those things set down, and we're able to kind of reinforce our basic policies, everything will run smoothly and it will work together as a system. That is the most important.